They might have 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. lift. Then you got an hour to go eat breakfast, and you might have starting 9 to 10, 9 to 12 might be practice. Then you come out of practice, get food, treatment. Then you might have academics, tutoring after that, or classes, and then tutoring's late at night.
Hey there, welcome to our podcast. Before we jump into today's episode, could you please do us a solid? If you're enjoying what you hear, give us a 5-star rating and hit that subscribe button on your platform. It really helps us reach more parents, coaches, and youth in the youth athlete development scene. All right, let's get into this week's chat.
Welcome back to In Athlete Podcast. I've got another special guest. I think all my guests are very special in their own right. I got Jaime Hernandez all the way in Arizona. So, first of all, how are you, Jaime? How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. Appreciate this invite. I'm pretty excited to be here with you.
Awesome. So just to give you a bit more context, Jaime is a strength and conditioning coach at the University of Arizona, which is a Division I school. They actually have a lot of sporting programs, and Jaime will be able to discuss those in a bit more detail. Just to give you a bit more context, we first met each other whilst we were interning at the University of Wisconsin, completely different climate over there as well. And that's where we first started chatting with each other. And that was in 2017. So it's about 7 years down the track as well. So it's really cool to, link back in. And I know I've linked in with Kevin as well, and some of the other Casey and some of the other interns over the past. And, it's really cool to see yourself and some other interns have gone into paid roles and big positions, and, really excited to hear and listen to what you have to say on this podcast. So just tell us a little bit more about yourself and we'll rip into it.
Absolutely, man. Once again, appreciate this. Thank you. And yeah, like you said, 7 years, it goes by fast. I went to the University of Wisconsin where we met. That's where I got my master's degree and got my foot in the door into this crazy field. Interned there for a couple of years, and then 2017, pretty much shortly after we met, we made the move out to Arizona. I was looking for jobs and applied to a whole bunch of different places just for an internship. Arizona was the first place to contact me back, so I kind of kept them in the back of my mind. And when the time was right, I reached back out and came over in May 2017 as a volunteer intern. Put my time in that summer, and at that time, I was kind of, right place, right spot. The department was growing, so the director here, Jim Crumpos, he was able to get another position approved, and I kind of fell into that spot. He had seen me work a couple months, and I was a good fit for it. So I've been here ever since. Have gone through different teams, different responsibilities. So when I first started, my teams were cross country, cheer, and then I assisted him heavily with baseball. After a couple years, I went through some transitions, and I ended up taking on a bulk of track and field teams that included the sprinters, the multis, and kept cross country, and I added men and women's tennis to my plate. After that, around COVID, we had some staff changes, and COVID made it pretty difficult, as it did around the whole world, right? We weren't able to really bring in candidates for open positions. We had the position of women's basketball strength and conditioning open, and kind of went with an internal hire, so to speak. Talked with the coach, and we were a good fit, man, and put my time with them for 3 years, and it was a great experience. Probably the most challenging up to my career, but also the most rewarding. I got to go to the national title game in 2021, COVID year. We were in the bubble. That was an interesting experience. Spent like 17 days in a hotel and no contact with anybody, but that was fun. Coming out of that, 2 more years, we still made postseason with women's basketball. And then just last year, I took a step away from basketball and took on gymnastics, back to men's tennis, still have cross country, and I'm getting beach volleyball this upcoming fall. The transition was due to responsibility. So I've gotten more and more into like administrative roles. So I'm now in charge of our weight room, and I have responsibilities with the staff, making sure we are up to date with like certifications, and we're all CPR certified. And I have the periodically throughout the year, I go over different policies and protocols that we have and making sure that all of our staff knows those and that we're enforcing them with all the teams. So being with basketball, I wasn't able to fulfill these because of travel. So basketball is a lot of traveling, so I wasn't in the weight room as much. Coming back again last year, so that traveling went down, and now I'm able to have a presence here and be able to keep an eye on the staff and the weight room. And the teams are pretty fun. I mean, I had a lot of success with men's tennis. They won last year the Pac-12 and Pac-12 championship, Pac-12 tournament. So that was pretty cool. And gymnastics had a good season, and that was a fun sport. That was my first time working with them, and they were awesome. That's kind of the job part of it. Aside from that, man, I'm married. I got 2 kids. Been married since I was 20. I'm 36 now. I was born in Mexico and grew up. Part of my childhood in Mexico, came back and forth to the States a lot. And I always liked and enjoyed sports, but it wasn't until I got into deep into college, took a couple of years off, that I was wondering what to do and came across strength and conditioning in the class. And that's kind of set off the path to where I ended up in Wisconsin.
Yeah. And what are some of the key experiences that shaped your coaching philosophy?
For me, it's been defined honestly by the people, right? So we're both familiar with Kevin was a big influence at Wisconsin, and Snyder as well, Jim Snyder. The way they coach and approach things, but also it was for me very eye-opening to hear from Kevin his story of his personal side, his life story, and kind of sharing with me the stuff that strength and conditioning is and how it affected his personal life. And I kind of took some of those things and learned, like, that's not stuff I want to do per se. So he was also very humble. I can remember one of the best memories I have, man. I was asking him about, I don't remember the specific thing I asked him about. It's like, hey, have you heard of so-and-so? And his reply to me was like, Jaime, I'm going to be honest, man, I don't even know what you're talking about. So I thought that was pretty cool because I'm like, at the time, this guy's a director, but he was also kind of humble enough to be like, I know what I know, but there's also stuff I don't know. And he wasn't afraid to be like, dude, I don't know what that is. So he had a way of, like, if he didn't know something, he could research it. So that's one of the key things I learned from him is I'm comfortable with the stuff I'm aware of, but I'm also not going to pretend that I know everything. So with that, it opened my mind to, I have an opportunity to learn from everyone, even from my interns that come in. They might bring something to the table. And then here at Arizona, 2 coaches, my current boss, Jim Crumpos, and then an assistant we had named Rob Harris. Biggest takeaway, Rob Harris, he taught me that what matters is the movement. So his quote to me was, you got to marry yourself to the movement, not the exercise. And kind of what he meant by that was just don't get so caught up with saying, I'm a coach that likes to back squat and my whole team's going to back squat. He's like, if you have a kid that can't be successful at that, you're setting them up for failure. So instead, look at the movement mechanics of that exercise and how are ways that you can get those movement patterns out of that person somewhere else, somehow. So that was the biggest takeaway. So from him and from Jim, more on the administrative side, just learned a lot about, comes down to relationships. You have to make good, solid relationships, not just with the athletes, that's a given, but the sport coaches, the athletic trainers, and anybody that kind of touches them, which could be also sports psych, it's going to be academics. And so you can get a good idea of who this athlete is as a person. So building relationships, man, keeping things simple and understanding movement patterns rather than get yourself stuck into saying that I just only Olympic lift. So
yeah, I remember, I think it was with Kevin as well. Had a bit of a similar experience. One of his athletes at the time was experiencing some hip impingement, and I know I had done PRI prior to going up to Wisconsin, and then obviously with Schneider, he has his background in PRI and RPR and whatnot. And then I worked with one of the athletes, and then Kevin was just like, if you know what you're doing, go work with this person and see what happens. I was like, all right, cool. And it's really like eye-opening that Kevin kind of puts you in those positions to succeed, or, if you have like this kind of like nuanced knowledge that you're able to actually apply it as well. So, which I thought was really cool. And I think was it Jeff? It was quite funny. This one time, Jeff's hilarious, right?
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
get a freshman coming in, and they're doing like a snatch complex as part of their I guess part of their dynamic warm up, and he wanted me to. I think he was struggling to teach one of the freshmen to snatch, and I had actually done. I don't know. I just had forward thinking at the time, so I did some Olympic weightlifting coaching. I got coached before I came over.
Yeah.
And I was teaching this kid how to snatch. I'll do a hang power snatch, and within about 5 minutes, I think we got him there. And by the end of it, so it was kind of like a real cool situation where I think in Wisconsin, they really do put you in a position to succeed, which I've definitely noticed. And I think that's what I picked up from Kevin is you might have some nuanced information that he doesn't have, but he'll find a way to actually put you in a position. Or if you find a way, he'll be like, yeah, see how it goes. See if you actually get the opportunity to actually try it out. And I think that's what was a really humbling experience to be like, all right, I actually know something that someone else doesn't know, but there's a way for me to actually learn and develop. And then I've actually applied that as well with my coaches is, if you know something that I don't know, like I'm not the greatest with GPS data, but I got a guy who's doing honors in GPS data. So he can go and analyze it and explain to everyone else what this all means. So it's really cool.
Yeah. I think you nailed that, man. That's one of his biggest things. You're right. Is he recognized that he would recognize those kind of things and just give you that opportunity. But it just goes back to, I think it's just the type of person he was, right? He was aware if he didn't know something, but somebody else did, okay, let's find a way to apply it and give you that chance to do that. So that's huge.
Yeah. And then I know we're in college sports, it's a lot different to Australia here as well. So in college sports, like how do you go about like really catering and looking after the athlete? So what does it actually look like in terms of an athlete being looked after overall? So how does each department play their role in order to, service the athlete?
That's a great question. So college athletics is a little interesting because it's almost like the wild, wild west. Everybody can kind of run it differently, right? My experience, I've been pretty blessed. I count myself lucky as Wisconsin and Arizona have had similarities. Here at Arizona, we have what's called we run a medical model. So we have a director of, I can't remember his exact title, but it's a doctor. It's a medical doctor, and he oversees us and athletic training and nutrition and sports psych. So what that has created is it's empowered us to have more say with some of the things we do with the athletes and not get, for lack of a better word, overruled by coaches. So if we see a kid that's hurt and coach might want to rush them back, which, understandably if they need them for competition, but they're not ready, administration is going to have our back if we're like, this kid isn't ready. So we have some policies and protocols that are in place for that. So going back to what do we do for these athletes? So when they come in, it's a very big collaborative effort in this department. And that's been pretty sweet to see where I have some colleagues in other areas, right, that's a little bit more siloed. So week one, they come in, we do a battery of tests. They got to get cleared first by our athletic trainers, do the normal stuff. But on our end, we start collaborating right away and do some different testing that's changed over the years as technology gets better. We got force plates last year. That was the first time we had used force plates. So now we're integrating them. And I was charged with creating a return to play protocol. So we're trying to standardize different tests that we're like, these are the tests that we're going to use across the department, across every team, so that we get a picture of what this athlete looks like coming in. And that way, in a situation where they get hurt, we can go back to that data and see, here's kind of the minimum standards that we need for them to get back. So on the force plates, very simply, so we do a counter movement jump where we're testing. Coaches want to see obviously like height, but we're looking more at a return to play thing. So we're focusing on what's their power and what's their power production by per pound per kilograms, newtons per kilogram. We look at mid thigh pull for strength, but also we have found some cool metrics that can let us know about their neural capacities. Are they kind of neurally fatigued or are they in a good spot? We look at a hop test for reactive strength, and we look at sometimes if it's a basketball, like sport like basketball, they like to do the depth jump. Pretty kind of goes with that sport, but also looking at reactive strength. We'll do some mobility assessments. The cool thing with this now, with having the force plates, is that we're retesting a couple of those every week or bi-weekly. So that, again, you should be able to track an athlete. If they're getting stronger, their mid-thigh pull is going to be going up. But once again, if they get hurt, I should be able to pull data from 1 week or at worst 2 weeks prior to see right before the injury happened, where were they? Is there anything that stood out? But if not, okay, they got hurt here. Maybe we need them to get a little bit stronger before they get up there. Now, this data, the athletic trainers are getting it as well. We collaborate, we talk on a daily basis. And aside from that, we have what we call high performance teams. So every sport has an assigned athletic trainer, sport coach, dietitian. We have 2 dietitians for the department, but they each split the teams, right? And then sports psych. So at least once a month, most of the time it's bi-weekly, we meet as a high performance team. And we discuss the entire roster. If there's injuries that are going on, I get to hear from nutrition, or it's my opportunity to bring up stuff like, here's what I'm seeing in the weight room. This athlete might be lacking energy or something. And that's where we connect the dots, not only as a support staff, but then we also bring in the coaches so they're looped in on everything. One that helps them be aware of everything. Like, hey, testing, this person has been going down. Maybe you need to cut volume for them a little bit in their practices, or letting them know. Dietitians might say it's been through because of lack of energy. They're not fueling properly. They're not eating breakfast, whatever it may be, right? It's an adjustment getting to college. But that has helped us kind of not on one end, make sure coaches don't get caught by surprise that all of a sudden we're like, hey, we got to pull this kid because they're hurt, they're not eating. Like, they know ahead of time if there have been some red flags with any of these kids. And we also have, going back to the sports psych thing that's gotten bigger, sometimes it's on the mental side that they might be struggling. If I see something, I usually try to encourage them to go, but I also, in those meetings, I give a heads up. Hey, here's some athletes of potential concern, and here's what I've seen. Here's why. A lot of times they might be an isolated incident, but also there's times where the athletic trainers might say, I've also seen some of this, and then nutrition might say the same. So it helps us paint a better picture to get them through.
How do you go? Yeah, with the sports psych, how do you go with the uptake of it? Obviously, you may make the suggestion to go see someone, or to go see the sports psych for one of the athletes. How do you go about approaching that with the athlete? Because in Australia, we have a culture of, if we see a psych, there's a problem. It might be different in America. So how do you go with that approach?
Great question. We're trying to break that because, yes, you're right. There's still, even around here in the States, it's gotten less over the last couple of years of that stigma. Like, if you're going to see a sports psych, something's really wrong. But at the beginning of the year, kind of as part of their physical process, and sports psych also has actually like a questionnaire, and they meet with sports psych. So we try to get them in front of the teams early in the semester so they can introduce themselves, get a name to their face. But one of the main messages that gets delivered in that is, hey, we're here to help you guys, and start breaking down that stigma of, if you're coming to see me, it doesn't mean anything's wrong. So they'll actually kind of give them an idea of other things they help out with. One of them is like just performance anxiety. That was one that stood out to me last year, where they hammered as a department for all these athletes, is performance anxiety is part of competing at a high level. So if you just want better strategies to get into a mindset before you perform, come and see us, come and check us out. Like, if you just want to clean up a routine of breathing, or understand how breathing can help you focus. So by the time this happens, they should have already had some contact with them. So that makes the process easier. And they will do some sort of education with each team at least twice a semester, if not more. But yes, I can't force the athlete, man. So most of the time it's me suggesting it to the athlete, but I also follow up by going to the sports psych and athletic trainer and letting them know, hey, I recommended they come to you because of this and this. If it's a situation that is pretty critical that requires intervention, the sport coach can help out and make a mandatory meeting, or the athletic trainer can also step in and be like, hey, you have to have a mandatory meeting before we could clear you back for practice or for something. It doesn't mean they have to continue treatment, but they have to at least have like a check-in with them.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Yeah, because we have one of our team members. We call it mental performance coaching. So we kind of remove the psychology component, and it's more just trying to, like, I guess the best way, mentally trying to put them in the best position to perform. So whatever that may be in particular. So especially with some of our swimmers that do suffer from that performance anxiety as well. And then we can actually, I guess, start to walk them through the process of how they can better manage themselves. But it may be a lot of things outside of sport as well. Usually it is, to some degree, that's manifesting within the sport itself. Sometimes you might get some real talented athletes that have never really been tested throughout their junior years, and then when they come to the college level, it's like, oh shit. Then they get really tested. And the one thing I have found is in Australia, in Australian rules, football, is the kids that are born later tend to be more undersized. So they've always had to work their asses off in order to perform at a high level. And they're the ones you don't really need to worry about. It's the ones that are older, born in January and February. That's the way our seasons work. They're the ones that actually can struggle later on down the track, because everyone's started to catch up. And it's like, why am I not, better than everyone else? Because they've always been, put themselves on a pedestal. It's always the younger ones, the undersized ones, that end up being the dogs of the team. And they're the ones that actually go on to, more success. Is that very similar for you guys over there as well?
I would say it is, because if you look at the youth stuff, youth leagues, right? They're categorized by age, man. So 8 to 9 year olds or 8 to 10 year olds. And it's the kids that are born earlier, especially when you're younger, you're going to be bigger during those younger years. So I've seen that in youth sports here. Interesting that you said that. I don't remember what year I was looking at just soccer rosters for the World Cup. And a lot of the guys on the World Cup teams were born, the vast majority were like January to July that I saw. It was just one specific team, but it was like, oh, that's interesting. Not a lot were born later in the year. But I have seen that here in the States, though, like especially in youth. One of my kids plays soccer right now. He's like in the U10 team or something like that. And he was born in February. So when he's practicing out there, I'm like, he's one of the taller kids, because there's some kids that barely made the cut, but they're born later in the year, and he's almost a year older than him. So, yeah, I'd say I haven't done a deep dive, but yeah, I've seen some of that.
Yeah, it's more like a general trend. Doesn't mean it's it's happening everywhere. But we've got one kid who's just turned 14, plays baseball. The kid is like, I don't know, 6'5". The kid's a monster, right? He's a two-way player, so he's a pitcher and a batter. And he recently went to Alabama for a tournament, and he got because it was invite only. He got player of the series as well.
Yeah.
And he pitches at, I think his fastball is about 84, 85 miles. That's what he got clocked at.
Damn.
No, for a 14-year-old, it's kind of scary.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Good on him.
So, yeah. And because I think he's actually, the good thing about him is he's actually playing senior baseball, like at the local level. So that means he's playing bigger bodies. He's playing at a level that's relative to his ability as well. So that's the one thing that's been good, is he gets to be put in more high pressure situations now. Because if he was playing under 16s, he'd probably still dominate. But now he's playing adults. They've had more time, more experience. He can start to develop that experience in high pressure situations. And that's not going to stifle his development, but also, you've heard of the big fish, small pond mentality. Yep. He's out of the small pond, and now he's considered just like a fish, like a normal fish, like everyone else in the big pond. So I think long term that's going to be really good for him. So when he's looking to get recruited later on down the track at the college, he's going to be more prepared compared to a lot of other kids.
Yeah, he's being forced to develop things at a faster rate than a lot of the kids that are not doing that. So it's 100% true.
Yeah. And I want to talk about how do they go about balancing, I guess, the athletic training and academics? Because obviously with college, it's a big deal over there. You've got to keep a certain average. How do they go about balancing that across the board? You know, is there any issues, or how does the athletic staff and department support the athletes in terms of academics?
It's I don't think it's a perfect model, if I'm honest, and I'll go into why. So they have limits as far as the contact hours with coaches. So it's pretty structured in that way. Like off season, sports or sport coaches are only allowed 8 hours with these kids. They're only allowed 8 hours of mandatory time. The coach has a big say in how they want to divide that. Like I might have a coach that says, out of those 8 hours, we're going to do 4 hours in the weight room and the other 4 hours are sport practice. Okay. Once they get to the period that's called in season, that goes up to 20 hours of contact time. So practices are going to increase pretty much to almost 5 or 6 days a week. And then within that time, they got to account for anything mandatory the coach wants. If they want, weights will still be in there, but most of the time it's practice, film review, or any activity they want as a team that's mandatory. Now, every team is also assigned a academic advisor. So that's kind of from the academic standpoint, they're also included in these high performance team meetings so they could review grades and stuff like that. And what they present in those meetings is a very quick overview of here's this athlete, here's their current grades, here's a test they have upcoming, or here's an issue we're having. They're in charge of helping these guys out in season with like dean's excuses if they're going to be gone for certain tournaments during classes, and potentially working around tests or anything that they might have if it's during a tournament to kind of move those around. So it's a pretty big support. But most of their day is scheduled out, so to speak, right? They might have 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. lift. Then you got an hour to go eat breakfast, and you might have starting 9 to 10, 9 to 12 might be practice. Then you come out of practice, get food, treatment. Then you might have academics, tutoring after that, or classes, and then tutoring's late at night. And the reason I say I don't feel like it's perfect, we have work to do on it, is it's very common for athletes to graduate college and they have a little bit of an adjustment period. Either it could be 6 months to a year where they can't kind of figure out their daily schedule, or kind of figure out, this sounds harsh, right? But they can't kind of figure out their life because they were used to having everything laid out and planned for them to the minute, that it's a little bit overwhelming, man, for some of them. I've seen 3 things happen as far as the fitness side. I've seen athletes that as soon as they're done, they graduate, they don't stay active for the better part of a year. They don't want anything to do with weight room or activity or sport. They don't transition well. It takes some time. I've seen half of them, or another third of them, that get out and they're like, I want to stay active, but they don't have a good idea of what that means anymore, because they're now what you would say like general population if they're not pursuing their sport. So they have a hard time. So they feel like, I still need to work out like I did when I was an athlete. And it's like, no, if you just want to stay healthy now and just maintain strength, it looks very different. To help kind of combat that on a very small level, a lot of them take a class their junior or senior year where we come in as a strength and conditioning staff, and we do a couple classes of presenting, transitioning out as an athlete, and we cover basics of here's how you train now as an athlete, here's how you should train when you graduate and like leave and you're no longer involved in the sport, just to maintain health. And then the last third, there's some that want to maintain a competitive edge and they just love lifting. Some of them pick up something, whether it's like jujitsu or some other high competitive thing, because they want that drive of it. But it's a pretty interesting thing to see.
Keep an eye out on the second installment of our conversation. If you want to stay updated on the latest episodes, make sure to subscribe to Inner Athlete on both YouTube and Spotify.